Hello, this is Caleb Mosier, and today I'm going to be talking to Lance Meister about the Next Level Miniatures Kickstarter. Hello, Lance. How you doing today?
Caleb, how you doing, buddy? Thanks for having me on.
All right, if you hear any noise on my end, it's going to be they're power washing the building today, so they waited until I started recording to do it. So
no, that's okay. Have you ever watched those power washing videos where they clean like the really dirty?
It's really amazing. We have all this moss because this is a historical building that I'm working out of that used to be a really old fire station. It still has the old horse hookups that they used to hook horses up to drag the old-fashioned water pump around.
Nice.
And this is a very old and well-loved building, so they're giving it a clean today, so we'll deal with that. But let's get into this. I am going to be talking with Lance today about miniatures. I will do my best not to get into the weeds, not to get too technical. I am not an engineer. Now, Lance, how would you describe the technology that you're using now?
Well, I mean, if I can, I won't go too far in the weeds either. But the thermoplastic resin, or the thermoplastic resin injection, or what we use is, and a lot of people will ask, well, what is that? So the most common machine that's being used right now is the Siocast machine. So Siocast, if you can, and that's Siocast, you can, whoever's listening to this can Google that, you can go to their website, you can watch numerous videos, and they can show how the machine works. It basically looks kind of like a big rectangle, like if you had like a fridge sitting in your, but it isn't it doesn't make ice or anything. What it is, the inner workings, however, are just exactly what you'd expect. It has a thing that will heat up the resin. It will inject it into the molds that you make yourself, and the molds are ridiculously easy to make as comparison to. I mean, I don't know if you ever have done this, but if you call ahead, you can get a tour of the Reaper facility.
Yeah, and that's actually the new process. Is very similar to the old process where they have vulcanized rubber, and you can make those molds and you can produce pewter stuff out of those. So it's similar to that, but now we get to use this new thermoplastic material, which has a lot of benefits for on the tabletop.
Yeah. So the whole thing with thermoplastic resin is that it does a lot of what and I'm not here to poo-poo on Reaper at all. I have buckets and buckets of Reaper miniatures myself that I use for D&D, so I'm definitely a fan. But the same the same qualities that you're looking for out of a Bones figure, which is it's flexible, so if you bend the sword, it isn't going to snap off in your hand. It takes paint really, really well without a primer. Same thing is what you're going to get with the thermoplast resin. A lot of people hear the word resin and they start thinking of brittle fine cast models that you would get from GW or something like that. I know I used to field large armies when I played Warhammer a lot. And, I always would grimace whenever I'd have a fine cast model because I know I had to be really, really careful with it to make sure that things didn't snap off in my hand.
And if I can interject, a lot of people nowadays, when they think of resin, they're actually thinking of the new 3D printing stuff where they're using resin printing. And I'll tell you right away, I've been very disappointed with that. Unless you are doing it yourself or you are doing it with somebody who's very much motivated to give you a miniature that's going to have durability. The resin printing that everybody's giving all these compliments to and talking about the amazing detail, it looks great on a shelf. But the first time that I tried to get professionally printed resin stuff from companies or individual sellers on Etsy that were all very highly regarded. That's the first time I actually snapped off parts when I was painting a model. That never happened before, but with these new 3D renders, it looks beautiful on a shelf, but I want stuff that you can actually pick up and move around a tabletop,
Yeah, I mean, in another world, where when I still have a YouTube channel, but I mean, in another world where I used to do a lot of videos for board game prototypes, I remember people would send me, they wrap a miniature up that they 3D printed up in like 7 miles of bubble wrap, and when it got to me, it would be crumbles. You know, what I mean, like I would be like, well, yeah, I'm not going to use your miniature because it's a pile of plastic in the center of this bubble wrap cocoon that you gave it. So I agree. The 3D printing is very brittle.
It's very much in its infancy, and a lot of people are kind of jumping ahead where they're thinking like, this is the new thing, like people can like 3D print their miniatures in small batches and sell them, and it's just like and the product, as far as I can see, is just not consistent, and it's just not there for a consumer product yet.
Well, so the nice thing, and we actually posted a couple of videos in a GIF on the the Kickstarter page is still up. We will have the pledge manager actually open up in October. And so if you missed out on the Kickstarter, you're able to log in and you're able to back it as well. We have actually image, like we printed off a we shouldn't, I shouldn't say printed. We created the miniature of this dwarf with a staff. And like there's like Jason, my coworker, he took it and made a little quick video of him just taking the staff and bending it in a full 360 circle, and it's not snapping off, it's going back to where it was. And it's really a remarkable material. We got a fantastic minis artist, Mike Disney. Check him out on Twitch. We sent him one of our ogres, and like he just took it right out of the box and started painting with some, just standard hobby paints, and the paint just took to it right away. He said, I mean, this is amazing. He said, I don't have to prime this. I didn't do anything, and I'm able to paint right out of the box.
Yeah.
So
now
it's got
I want to interject here something. A lot
Yeah.
of people are okay with painting stuff directly on plastics, even plastics where it takes the paint really well. But the big important question I think I need to jump in right now is for people, the vast majority of people at Fumage, it's all about durability. So the most important thing is, will this material, like other thermoplastic material that I've worked with, will it take primer well?
Oh yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I have my own. Obviously I'm not on video with you, so you can't see, but I have my own, and I've used both a rattle can on the stuff that I painted, and I've also, with my airbrush, I've just put some Stylon Res on there, and that's just what I use. I mean, but it's all functionally the same, and it takes primer just fine. I mean, it's just
that's a big thing, because with the thermoplastic miniatures that I've encountered, that I've been able to get, it seems like they take primer really well, which is completely different than the PVC materials made overseas. And that's an important thing, because if you are interested in durability, you really need a material that can take a primer well. And with the PVC miniatures overseas, I go through a rigmarole to get it done. I've gone up almost to the point where I'm considering doing some sort of homebrewed plastic annealing thing where I'm going to try to heat treat them just so the paint stains on there well enough. And it's just, from my experience, you have to wash them. You literally have to soak them in 90% rubbing alcohol, let them dry, and then the only primer that goes on well is the Vallejo polyurethane primer, something like Vallejo or Badger. That will go on there well. But I have heard people say, oh, the primers work well if you use this primer and that primer. I have done so many tests.
We've had this project in line for like well over a year, working with two fantastic partners, Frog Guy Games and Punga, who did our models, and they did a fantastic job. And I made sure, I was like, we need test things. I need to test these out myself. I need to paint them. So when I do get asked questions about it, I can give these answers with, I can stand behind what I'm saying.
Yeah. And again, I love other miniature companies. I'm not going to name names, but a lot of them are just really squirrely when it comes to some of this stuff. And they'll say something like, oh, you can use this sort of thing to prime the miniatures if you want to. But then I do tests, and it doesn't work out all that well. And it's just like,
well, it's if you want to ruin it, right? If you want to ruin the miniature, feel free.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the situation is that I work with a lot of public libraries. I do a lot of public games, and the miniatures that I use for my games, and this is similar for the vast majority of people who watch my channel, they have to be durable. I really have high hopes that it's going to be the same level of durability for this. And I feel really confident talking to you, knowing that you are a person who plays D&D and you are actually specifically testing out this material personally and, priming it and painting it and seeing what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, well, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, I should highlight the really nice thing, especially, and you haven't brought this up yet, but right now we are in a shipping doldrums world where China, can manufacture the heck out of anything you ask them to manufacture.
But it's the issue of getting it on a boat and getting it halfway across the world.
I mean, the nice thing is that because we have our own machine, that will make all of the minis that we are going to produce and send to all of our backers, is that it's located in a warehouse in St. Louis, Missouri. And if you go and watch the videos of it being used and being processed, I mean, you make hundreds of miniatures in a day. So, I mean, there has been some question about people. It's like, how often, how much can you make? What's the volume? I mean, we didn't go into this, blindly and just, throwing a dart and hoping it'll work. I mean, we were astounded by the response we got. I work in the board game industry as well. And so I've run over 100 Kickstarter campaigns for different companies. And I usually have a gut feeling of what things are going to do. With this one, I had no idea, and it really blew us out of the water. I mean, 3,000 plus backers, 250 grand. We were just super excited that people were believing in us and believing what we were offering.
Yeah, and again, I think a lot of people are very excited about miniatures that are made in the United States. Like I said, there's a lot of companies that are making stuff out of pewter, but the prices for those miniatures has really gone up. I think this would be a good point. Is there anything else you want to talk about the Kickstarter process? Anything that surprised you?
As far as what surprised me about the Kickstarter, I wouldn't say I was surprised. What I would say, though, is just the response we got. It was so overwhelming and positive. We were knocking down stretch goals left and right. The fact that we were just, as we kept on climbing the ladder, we kept on offering more and more miniatures to all the backers. So now, I mean, if you won't mind a little bit of publicity, I mean, it's like you're getting over 130 miniatures plus this giant dragon figure, and it's all for like a really low price. I mean, $80. So you're getting down to, I think it was like at the end it was something like 68 cents per mini or something like that was what it was going to cost a backer. So we really were able to offer an incredible value to everybody, and so they could really see the quality. And also the nice thing about this is that we now are planning our next Kickstarter campaign. We're already getting that ball rolling. We're planning about how we're going, like, as far as like retailer chains have reached out to us saying, hey, how can we have your minis like in on our shelves so we can sell them. So that's really cool. But we're keeping our feet on the ground, though. I mean, the biggest thing is that we know that we have to knock it out of the park, make these miniatures, make them quality, get them produced, get them to our backers quickly, and make them amazing. And so then the next time we come back, everybody else is going to be able to say, dude, you got to back these guys, because look what I got the last time. It's even going to be better this time. And as they say, the proof is in the pudding. Well, like, we got to make sure our pudding is awesome and produce that. And that's like, yeah, we're definitely excited, but we're staying grounded, and we just want to make like what everybody else wants. I mean, I don't know about you, Caleb. I'm almost 50 years old. I can remember going to my local game store and looking at miniatures I wanted to buy when I was 14, 15 years old, and thinking, God, I mean, I want 10 orcs, but I can't afford to get 10 orcs. I mean, because I don't have the money. But now we live in an era where it's like, oh, You want 20 goblins? Yeah, it's not gonna break the bank if you want a bunch of goblins, so you can put them all in your dungeon and what have you. And people want a giant bucket full of awesome miniatures at a good price, and that's what we're doing. And I'm excited about it, and I hope everybody else is too.
So let's go into some questions. I think we answered all the questions about priming, preparing the miniatures. Obviously, is there any kind of priming process you think is not going to work on these when it comes to like the Vallejo polyurethane stuff or the spray primers?
I mean, the only thing, you always get those grognards that say, "Oh, I just head down to my local hardware store and I buy any primer and it works just fine."
Yeah.
I've always been like, yeah, why don't you just pay an extra $5 and at least get an army painter, rattle can.
Army painter, I think, is the best. From where the stuff that's available to me locally, army painter seems to be the best quality for the price. And people always talk about, all you gotta use car primer, and it's just like that's car primer and that's sandable. So if there are any good details on the miniatures, that car primer is going to fill in those details, and yeah.
So I would stick with a hobby primer. I mean, like you say, go to an army painter, go to a Vallejo, get a Citadel. Stick with a trusted name, that you like. And and if you're fortunate enough, see, I live up in Minnesota, so I literally, I don't airbrush much, but I make sure I have an airbrush because when it gets cold outside, I can still prime stuff inside my house.
Oh yeah, I absolutely love the Vallejo and Badger because the surface primer, a lot of people use it in airbrushes, but you can still you can actually just still paint it on with a brush, and that's generally what I usually end up doing with a miniature. If I need something primed and it's cold outside, then I just prime it with some surface primer and a brush, and it works out great.
And since we're talking about this, one of the really nice things about the thermoplast resin is that it's not a noticeable thing, but when you pick one up and you feel it in your hands, there is I hate to say this, but like a grit to it, and it's just because there's a texture to it that really just sucks the paint right off of the brush for you. Yeah, and so that's one of the reasons why you're able to paint it without a primer, and there's that surface cohesion that it wants to take the paint, it wants to pop for you.
Yeah, and from what I know about this material, it takes super glue perfectly great. It's yep. And I've also heard that it's similar, where if you do have something that's bent, using the old putting it in hot water for a couple minutes.
Hot water, ice water.
Yeah. And I'll just make a side note here. The hot water, ice water thing, I actually don't like that. I actually like the hot water and then just letting it cool down slowly.
Oh, really?
That way, and you have to leave it in the hot water for a while. And then once it's bent back to where it needs to go, just let it slowly cool back, especially for smaller parts. I think if you're dealing with a larger part, then I think the hot water, ice water thing, I think works out perfectly good. But I think there's just something in the molecules where if it slowly goes back to temperature, they kind of snap back to their original position in a more secure manner.
I've been doing it wrong all these years, what you're trying to tell me?
Well, I don't know what models you've been using. I'm talking in generalities. I don't know how it's going to work. But yeah. So let's go back to questions. Oh yeah, the bubbles question. Now, if anybody's wondering where this comes from, this is from when Warhammer back in the day changed up their materials, and there was massive issues with bubbles and miscasts that got to the consumers. Do you have anything about that?
Well, I remember that era with GW because I was fully into the tabletop Warhammer hobby at that time, and you still run into that. Not to throw shade anyway, but you can still run into that regardless to the company. Anything that is like print to order. And with where the quality control isn't good, just things happen. The nice thing about the thermoplast resin is that, well, for one, we haven't experienced it yet. Which we've had situations where there's been like an imperfection, and that's usually because after a certain number of times, because we make the mold, and after a certain number of pressings, the mold will break down. Which there's just not much you can do about that. It's by nature it is a silicon mold. It is malleable, and just with anything else, if it just keeps on being used and used and used and heated and used, it'll bust eventually. And that's usually like after you're reaching that 750th time of using the mold, to make, like you have a sheet that you're putting in the silocast that has, like, let's just say it has your 12 orcs on it that you're printing off, and you've made it, you're getting towards that, and we'd even look at it, it's like, okay, we're getting to that point where, like, it's just like it's gonna be challenging here because the inner workings of the mold are gonna break down, and then you see the imperfection. And that's one of the nice things too. We're not sending this to China to make, and where they're being made, just like with no eyes on everything. You literally are one person putting the mold in there, letting the machine do its work, and then you're prepping the next mold to be put in, and then once it's done, you're pulling that out, and between the 2 or 3 of us are working. One person's going to take that out. They're going to take the minis out, pop them out of the mold, and then start prepping the mold again. But we're going to be able to look at those miniatures and take a look at it. And it's we have, like I said, we have had issues as far as that, but as soon as that happens, you just ditch the mold and you throw it out, and you can make another one very inexpensively. And just start up again.
Yeah, and if people don't understand, when you're talking about using certain materials and molds, some of the molds for the cheaper materials cost like tens of thousands of dollars just for one mold. Yes. And with these, from what I've heard, Lance, they don't really cost a huge amount of money to get a mold that you're gonna, it's. I don't want to get into it, but it's
no,
kind of like
again, you're going into the weeds a little bit. But the big thing is that the biggest expense we'll probably have is getting the metal master made for the different figures. So and we would get a metal master made just because then we don't have, as long as that master is perfect, it is a rigid metal miniature that we don't have to worry about the actual the base for the mold breaking down in any way.
Yeah, because then you can use the master to make another mold.
Exactly. And so that's like one of the things that we'll be doing to make sure to continue the level of quality that we want to bring to all of our backers when they get every one of them. And of course, I'm not going to stand here and say there won't be a single mistake in any miniature ever delivered to a backer, but we'll stand behind everything that we send. And if any of our backers say, yeah, I got 20 orcs and these 2 have broken swords, or this one has like the for whatever reason the hand got sheared off or something, you know what, give us your address, we'll send you out another one. Our apologies, we'll make you whole, no worries, we'll give one out. And I should mention one other thing, and I didn't mention this earlier. Out of all the miniatures, the over 130 miniatures that each person's going to get, I think there's only 4, possibly 5 that are actually going to come in pieces. All the rest are going to come whole. Yeah. So the actual need to super glue, unless you're kit bashing something for some reason, the actual need to assemble these is almost it's less than that's
the
like just
big thing that I keep on forgetting to mention, that these are different from metal miniatures, where with metal miniatures you have limitations when it comes to undercuts, and you have limitations to what you can actually make where the miniature comes out in one piece. And with this thermoplastic process, those limitations are kind of lifted in a little bit, and you can have most of your miniatures just in one piece, ready to go, because that's what the process allows you to do.
Yeah, and it's like, it's all those things where like you like, oh, the arm can't be situated in a certain direction.
Oh yeah,
or you can't have a cape that billows out, unless it billows out and like out and then to the right. There's all those, and thermoplastic is a very forgiving.
As much material as I love the old school pewter chainmail miniatures, the amount of times where I lost a tiny little arm or a tiny little part because they're all in multi-piece, and you're trying to do your abyssal maul, and you realize that somewhere around the line, when you open the package to when you're about to put together the miniature, one of his tiny little arms are missing, and you're kind of screwed.
Or even worse, like, I mean, you're putting it together at your craft table, and like you've got the tweezers on that little tiny arm, and you're moving it up, and you got the drop of glue exactly where you want it, and you're gonna put them together, and all of a sudden, like you bump the table, and the thing flicks out of the thing, and then you're like, and you're looking in the carpet, and you're like, well, that's lost forever.
I've lost that hand.
Yeah, you're getting out the flashlight, you're crawling on all fours looking for it.
I think we've all been there. This kind of a vague question somebody had about pricing structure and packaging. Obviously, we're going to get the Kickstarter stuff, and like I said, the people that do the Kickstarter and the people that do the you're going to be opening up the after Kickstarter backer system again in October. They're just going to be getting a bunch of miniatures. But are you going to be doing like individual packaging for the miniatures moving forward, or is that something that's
what we want to do? I mean, it's absolutely what we want to do. Like I said, we've been a great number of retail stores have reached out to us and have said, it's like, hey, we'd really like this. And one of the things is that to keep prices down, we haven't like made a cool box that's gonna have art on it and so somebody can take that and put it on their store shelf. We haven't done that yet. Now, it's something we want to do. It's something that we would very much want, this to be sold to as many people as possible. But it's just one of those things that we haven't come to a decision yet. I mean, that's ultimately what it is. We are going to make sure, however, that it is in our best interest that your miniatures arrive at your door to our backers is pristine and as little damage as possible. So we are exploring packaging and shipping options that are going to allow us to avoid any breakage whatsoever. So don't think we're just gonna grab a box and dump a barrel full of miniatures in it, tape it up, and send it off to you. We're gonna make sure that we get those to you as safe as possible.
I bought a set of like 30 pewter samurai from a board game that I forget the name of, but they're 28 millimeter pewter samurais, right? And the person on eBay sent them to me in a shoebox with no protection. Oh. And by the time they got to me, every single one of them was broken. The excuse was like, I've never shipped anything before. So, yeah. that is nothing to do with
well, no, I mean that's just we have shipped things before. I would like to publish service announcement of we have definitely shipped things before.
I think anybody who's familiar with you knows that you've worked on many very successful Kickstarters where everything was fulfilled and everybody got their physical stuff in the mail safe. So I'm not really worried about that. I'm very happy that you're focusing on making sure that everybody who backed the Kickstarter and people who are going to be backing the what is it called? Is it the backer kit or what?
Well, we're going to use GameFound. I mean, there's several different pledge managers, and we'll be using GameFound.com, and it should be. I mean, I don't know when you're going to publish this, but we're hoping to have it actually live the second week of October.
Ooh, so, that's very good.
And we'll obviously, if you go to the Kickstarter page at Next Level Miniatures, there'll be an update there that says it. We'll send out emails to everybody.
Pricing, packaging. Okay, here's a question somebody asked, and maybe in the far-flung future, but they asked, are you going to be selling pre-painted miniatures?
It's something that we looked into, and right now, honestly, we would have to ship them to like a place where somebody's going to paint them, and then they have to ship them back. And when you get those pre-painted miniatures, from say like the Pathfinder minis or the WizKids minis. I mean, those are painted in China by people that just have an assembly line. I don't know if you've seen that, but I mean, and God bless them, for doing it and making minis that are obviously not probably to like a a high level hobbyist level, but I mean, but they're presentable, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you can have it.
And again, people can do their best, but I, in the past, have have taken some pictures of some horrific miniatures with some faces painted on there that are just breathtaking in their hideousness. But
The island of misfit toys.
Yeah, that's what you get from pre-painted. I don't know if we're ever going to go back to the days of the Hasbro pre-painted, where you got a level of quality that was acceptable, because it's, nowadays it is a little bit of luck of the draw, and some sets are better than others. So yeah, I think the vast majority of the people that follow my channel, though, are perfectly fine with doing their own speed painting on their miniatures, so they're table ready. But yeah, that was just a question that I was asked.
I will say this to people that want to, like, there's nothing wrong with heading out and picking up, a 10-12 contrast paints and get, which, I don't know if you've monkeyed with the contrast paints. I'm sure you have.
Yep.
From GW. I think that those, if you are not a serious, like, heavy duty painter, and if you want to just spend an hour watching a movie and setting up some time to, like, paint your stuff with that, and, like, Google up how to do an assembly line miniature process, you can get these painted. They will be table ready, and they will pop, and they will look fresh, and they will look exactly like you want. If you're playing a D&D game and you want your people to see the green skin of the orcs when you get done, it's going to work for you. Mm-hmm. Are they going to win prizes? Absolutely not. But I mean, at the very least, this is what I've said to anybody who's, like, scared about painting, and I'm sure you've probably said the same thing. Just dive in. Just do it, because you're a tub of green clean away from fixing your mistakes anyway. So just have some fun with it. And also, I always feel better when the miniatures that we're using when I play my role playing games, if I'm looking at the stuff that I painted, like, I take a certain amount of pride in that. Mm-hmm. I think that's pretty cool.
All right. And again, there's a lot of people on my Discord showing off all the miniatures that they're painting up, so that is always a fun time. Another question, will there be translucent materials?
So this is one of the drawbacks, I would say, to using thermoplastic resin. Because it is in its relative infancy right now, there isn't a lot of options as far as the colors that we want to use. From what I understand, and we have talked, translucent materials right now are not an option. They are looking at getting it, so it's a possibility in the future, and, like, the technology just hasn't caught up with the stuff that we're using right now. Yeah. So I want it. I mean, I definitely want to be able to make, ghosts that look cool, like, and phantoms, and gelatinous cubes, and things like that will have that translucent look to them. But unfortunately, right now, just not an option.
I think that is a personal preference thing. I certainly know a lot of people who take the old Hasbro translucent minis and then they just paint over them anyways. So I think it is a personal preference. So, I mean, I think people are going to be more than happy.
Oh, I prefer it. I'll tell you right now, I prefer it. If I want a ghost on my table, I want it to have, like, that translucent look to it. It makes it look spooky, right? I mean, that's my personal feel. But I mean, it's just, and trust us, it's something I want to do. But it's just, right now, we just got to wait for the option to be available to us, and we just don't have that option right now.
Excellent. Final question: will your system be able to eventually make use of materials that are, like, plant-based, like the plant-based resins?
I mean, it's another thing as well. I mean, as we progress into the future, searching for more and more eco-friendly options are always going to be on our radar. And the nice thing here is that we've already like bridged a gap to make this project more eco-friendly by eliminating the travel time and the shipping and the expense and the damage to the environment from getting things from China to the United States. So that was one of the other things that we're really excited about making this stuff in the U.S. All I can say is this. As soon as the option becomes available to us to have a more eco-friendly resin that we can use to maintain the level of detail that we want to have, and also is cost efficient for us, so we're not like losing money when we make the miniatures, it is something we'll do.
Yeah, and again, I think with a lot of these questions, people don't seem to realize how cutting edge and in the infancy this technology is, because this is something that just like a couple of years ago just didn't exist. This is all very brand new. So I think people
have been painting that. Like you said, you brought up pewter. I mean, it's like how many and lead. I mean, obviously, if you had lead-based miniatures, I mean, we've come so far. I mean, I remember the first Reaper Bones Kickstarter, and people were just blown away. I mean, they did millions of dollars on that one, if I remember correctly. Because the idea
one of the most successful Kickstarters at the time, because people just never saw a product like this, and I think this is something similar where it's in its infancy, and we will have to see how it grows and goes. The
short story is cost, right?
Yeah.
So this the ability, like how much it costs to print off those miniatures, how much it costs to have them sent to different people. Like, I mean, I'm a hack painter. I mean, I paint, but I would not. People would be like, they look like this.
You want the painted thing to be painted professionally for something like this.
And so it's just one of those things where we had a couple of people that we had lined up that were willing to paint several minis, and we had those particular minis. We made them, and we sent them out, and due to scheduling situations, we unfortunately they weren't able to get the work done in time. And I don't say that to badmouth any of the media creators or whatever. I understand things happen, and they were gracious to offer to paint them in the first place. I'm glad that we were able to get Mike Disney. Again, another shout out to him, Art of Mike Disney on Twitch.
Yeah, he did a great job he did the Ogre, right?
Yeah, he did the Ogre, and so and that was a rush. That was like literally. I'm friends with a gentleman who's big into the miniatures scene, Chad Roberts, and I reached out to him and I said, "Do you have anybody that could do this for us, like as a rush job?" And he came back an hour later. He said, "Mike said he'd do it," and I overnighted an Ogre to him, and then the next day he was painting it live on Twitch. And so, I mean, and he did a fantastic job. He was amazing.
And once again, I don't want to seem like I'm defending the company here, but like this is over 100 miniatures, so it's not like that you can do prototypes of like just every single thing and get it painted. I mean, there's a lot of other work behind the scenes that needs to be done so people can actually get the product in the end. So yeah, I mean, you are literally raising money so you can produce these miniatures on a large scale.
And here's the ultimate line is that, would we do the next once this campaign, we've been able to make these miniatures, we're able to send them out to our backers, and then we start the second campaign, we're going to do things differently. Everything's a learning process, and we're going to have our people that are going to paint those miniatures lined up. They're going to have those miniatures early. They're going to have them painted already. We're going to have all that stuff ready to go when we start the campaign, instead of like scrambling and trying to get something done as the campaign's rolling up. So, I mean, it's just it's a good question, and it's a fair question. And Punga was nice enough to take their 3D renders that they made, which they did a fantastic job with. And they were kind enough to do the coloring process for us, to just kind of show off what it could look like once you paint them. Now, I personally could never paint them that well, but I'm sure there's people out there that could.
Yeah. All right, then. Well, Lance, is there anything else you want to mention before we end this recording?
No, not at all. I mean, other than just thank you very much, Caleb, for reaching out and asking if you could cover the campaign. And
Lance, I just want to thank you again for giving your time to answer all these questions from my viewers and listeners. I thank you very much.
And thank you. I appreciate you, like I said, for taking the time and just being so interested as you are.
You have a nice afternoon, Lance. Thanks again.
Take care.